Hey guys, so now that we have the skeleton and the HTML in place, let's try to tweak it a little and try to make sure that we have something coming in from an object. So this hard-coded 10, 10, 5 doesn't make sense. So let's try to make sure we try to make it a little more dynamic and probably have the skeleton or probably split up some things. Like if you see this 10, 10, 10, these are like options. So this is a repeatable component. And as per the principle that we started with, you try to break down to the minimum component possible so that I can reuse. So if I can just break this down as an option to a smaller component, I can probably reuse it again and again, which is 4 times, so that I don't have to write the same line of code again and again. Now, how do I do that? We'll see that in this session. Now, I haven't made any changes except I added a small logo out here for the Slack community that all my students come on to. So you can also sign up and you can also pretty much be there, be a part of the community and ask me any questions out there if you want to. Okay. Now, so let's get started with the code. I have the quiz.js where I have all the 4 options created. I have the 5 and the 5. Now let's try to create it dynamically. So the first thing that comes to mind is you need to initialize it. So you write a constructor. Now in the constructor, what we can do is we can write a small object called riddle. Let's say let riddle is equals to an empty object for now. Okay. And then you set the state as riddle. And of course, if you're using ES6, you don't have to do riddle colon riddle. So doing riddle colon riddle is as good as doing just riddle. So it will still work. Okay. So you can just do a riddle and it should work. Now it doesn't pass in anything yet. So we need to make sure that we come up with an idea. So if you can see that any question will have 4 different options, 1, 2, 3 and 4, which means this can be a repetitive thing or probably an array. So let's try to do that. So let's say results array and let's give it options. Let's say 8, 9, 10 and 11 just for this example. Then we also have 2 fields, which is the first field which is 5 and the second field which is 5 again. So let's say we give them a name as field 1 as 5, field 2 on the new line as 5 again, and of course we need to know what is the correct answer. So in this scenario, answer will be 10 because we need to compare something with the answer or whatever the field's total is going to be. Nothing changes here. Now let's try to do this dynamically. So first of all, to break this into a smaller component, more than that, let's just generate this dynamically by looping in the results array. And how do we do that? Well, the answer is very simple. We can use the JavaScript dot map for the array. So let's say I will go here and say add a new method. Say this dot render options. Okay. Now this is a new method that I will be creating. So I need to make sure that I bind it. So this dot render options is equals to this dot render options dot bind this. Now that I have bound it, it will fail again because I haven't defined the options yet. So let's do that. Let's make sure we write a return. And now let's just copy and paste this out here so that the same code can be reflected and nothing changes yet. Let's save this, wait for the screen to refresh, and you can see nothing changes and everything is displayed as is. So all you did was you remove the view, which is the rendering of these options, into a small method. Now what we can also do is we can move this into a smaller component. So let's try to do that. So let's do a quiz options, new file, quiz options.js. Let's just save this file. And again, this is as good as import. Let me just close this first. Let's say import React. Of course, this is going to be a component. So let's make sure we have the component as well from React. Step 1 done. Now let's go down and say class quiz options extends component. This is very basic. So every time you create a component, you need to do that. So now that we have that, let's make sure we have a render method. because every component needs to make sure that there is some kind of a rendering happening. Let's have the return, and let's just make sure that we export the file. So let's say export quiz options, export default quiz options. Okay, so now I'm not rendering anything yet, so let me just copy this entire line, which is this one, and put it out here. Okay, let's save this, and let's make sure we import quiz options here. So import quiz options from quiz options. Okay, so now I've imported the quiz options, and instead of this I can just pass quiz options 4 times. Let's say quiz options. Let me just do it once, so let's make sure that we are getting it from that component. Yes, fantastic. Now let's just do this 4 times. Let me just copy this, 1, 2, and 3. So I have 3 more options added, so everything is now coming from my child component. Easy, right? So let me just take a pause here, and I will explain you what I just did. So to start with, we knew that this can be reused. Every component can be reused. So what we did was we tried to put it into a separate component. Now how do we do that? First thing we did was we just added a small method here, or a function, and moved everything into the function. So we can at least separate our prime or quiz rendering logic from the options logic. Now before even creating the child component. Once we did that, we knew that it works. After that, we added the new child component, which is quiz options. And once we added the quiz options, we just moved the div in here. So nothing fancy yet, nothing dynamic, but you see where we are going. All we need to pass is a small property with the number, and the quiz option will start displaying that number. Very easy. Remember the way we have done it in the past? And of course, we also created a small riddle object which will hold the results array, because we need 4 options and we need to loop through them. We also have 2 fields, which is the questions 5 and 5, and we have an answer. Of course, we need to compare the answer on whatever is the answer. And then we also bind the render options. So that's all we've done in this lecture. I hope it makes sense, and we will pick it up from this in the next video.